people from minority backgrounds are within leadership in the NHS, and it's been a long journey. But one of those benefits will be that lived experience, the community perspective, feeding that into policy, which will really bring about some of those transformational, shifts that we're looking for.
Hi Charles, welcome to Tameside. I just want to say thank you so much. I'm so pleased that you've been able to come. You do some great work as the CEO of the Caribbean and African Health Network, but for me, in some of these meetings around the integrated care system and all the change and how articulate you are in meetings and how you really challenge the system, I feel really inspired by you. So I'm really, really pleased that you've got this time, because I always learn things from you, and I want to take some of the learning from you to implement into my own style.
Yeah.
So I'm going to quiz you a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And thanks, Jenny, for your time. Thanks for all you do, for communities, and we all know what we've been through, and leadership has been really, really important. So thanks for what you do and how you lead beyond your own organization as well, and just say massive thanks. But also your real passion and interest in inclusive leadership and making sure that those you serve are reflected within your own workforce as well as the wider workforce in the voluntary sector. So thanks, Jenny, for that.
Great. I'm absolutely incredibly passionate. I do think that our workforce, and especially our leadership, needs to reflect that of our communities. What attracted you to leadership? What made you want to be a leader?
Well, that's a really good question. I think for me it's been around finding opportunities to give back to community, and then sometimes you end up getting involved and you given roles. So I was born in Ghana. I came over to do my master's in 2002. So, I didn't really know anyone, and then did some volunteering, and then ended up running around being part of various groups. And then, people encourage you, oh, you can do this. Oh, do you want to join the, management committee and stuff like that? So it wasn't planned, but I think that shared passion of wanting to give something back, but also what I've learned, to be able to share that is what has ended up where I am now.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really amazing journey, and hopefully we'll look more about how people can take some practical steps to do that. When we first started to work together most closely, it was during the COVID time and the pandemic. So we just formed the Leadership Mental Health Group, and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And some really good insight that I received was some research that you was involved in around the pandemic, and we know that the members of our communities who were black or from racialised communities got hit harder than other members of the community, and it's shown massive inequalities. And one thing that's really resonated with me in that research that you did is that people of our communities, from racialised communities, said that they would much prefer and feel to be able to engage in organisations where there is black-led leadership. As a whole sector, how can we make sure that happens?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, for that. It was quite striking. So, and most people know research and gathering the data and the evidence is what usually drive things. We knew anecdotally, but it was quite powerful to come out from the research. And I suppose there are historic issues to that, and one of the biggest is the lack of trust, but also how sometimes people are not really understood, and because we all live in a busy world, we could get very siloed and just focus on what we do rather than finding out what matters to people. And Jenny, in Greater Manchester, but also some of the work happening at national level is that person-centered approach. And so it's similar to what hasn't really happened, where the system or services haven't really taken time to understand what really matters to individuals. And once again, it's that thing about that lived experience and hearing unheard voices and making sure we create spaces for them. So I suppose as a sector, in order to change, and it has to start from that buying and that recognition that things need to change. We need that diversity of thought. We need to learn from other protected equality characteristics and strands and some of the changes that have been made. 100 years ago, women couldn't vote. We all know the significant improvement and the outcomes now that things have changed. So similarly, I think we need to apply, community after community. So it's that, because I know, and because of some of the work we do, we talk about place, but also community of identity.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to that shared identity, taking time to really understand that and then make sure that our services are responding to some of those peculiar needs are really important. So sometimes, people just talk about language, but it's not just language, it's culture as well. And what we see is that sense of belonging. If people feel they belong to a place or they can own something, then it really unleashes their potential and they can contribute. So as a sector, we need to recognize there are gaps and then collectively start on a journey where we want to make the change happen and be committed to it. So there were many statements issued following the murder of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. There was a real resurgence of that. But what we kept saying was, great to have the statements. Lots of solidarity like has never been seen before. And sometimes we don't know whether it's because of the lockdown, everybody was home, so there was more activity on social media. But we all know even the protests that did happen, it was very, very diverse, like has never happened before. So the world is changing, and I think as a sector we need to, change as well.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the right time now for us to do not just a talk, but let's do some actions.
Yeah. And then coincidentally, the theme for this year's Black History is action. Not words. And people have sat around the table. They've said we want to do this. It will be good. But the benefits for inclusive leadership is out there. Lots of evidence, whether in the private sector, in voluntary sector. So it's that time now where we need to take actions. And I think the reassurance I always give is no step is too little or too small. We need to have those baby steps. We need to trial certain things. And even if it doesn't work, what do we learn from it? Because that's when we can make sure that, we keep in the momentum. But unless people are willing to trial and fail, then they wouldn't take any step at all.
Yeah. So some really good takeaways there of like, whatever step you do it, review it. If it's wrong, then learn from that, move forwards. Don't be afraid, involve people, which are all real tangible things that we can do as a sector.
Yeah.
So just finally really, but probably most important, I know one of the passions that drive us both is the people of our communities that we know can experience really difficult mental health, not just around mental health illness, but actually societal and some of the emotions. And I feel that our services within the system, not so much the voluntary sector, that the offer isn't as representative to people of racialised communities because they don't access them. What do you think we could do to try and promote mental health and positive mental health to communities of racialised?
Yeah, thanks Jenny for that, and you're absolutely right. I think for me it goes back to what really matters to people. So one of the very first things we know is, especially within the migrant community, mental health is more of a taboo topic.
Right.
Because we're privileged and blessed to have the NHS, and it's a free service. People in developing countries don't have that. But also, when I grew up in Ghana and moved over in 2002, if anyone had mental health issues, then that person will be kept in a psychiatric hospital, they were, not having their shower, and that's what we knew. So there's a stigma, there's a label, that we need to deal with, in order for them to encourage people to have, access to service. But also there's data out there about poor outcomes. And once again, it goes back to what really matters to people. So within some of those minority ethnic communities, faith is a key part. And therefore, sometimes creating those spaces where people can, undertake or perform their religious rituals in addition to the medication and others, working hand in hand makes a real difference. So it's about the settings, even food within acute settings. If minority people like their food salted, spicy, and all of that, but you're in a hospital ward and you can't have that. And so once again, it's always sadly about, do I really belong? Do I really matter? And that's what, and so it's brilliant. And, it's brilliant that we have system leaders who are beginning to influence in a direction where there's culturally appropriate, because that's the phrase we use, culturally appropriate service. Is it meeting the cultural needs, the religious needs, the other identity issues? Are the languages there, So can people, because we know about dementia. I mean, one of the things that for our Black older population helps is their hymns, so there are a couple of dementia groups, and what they do for older people experience, is to, encourage them to be singing their hymns and activities, because they're having issues with diagnosis and especially for those who didn't grow up here, then the World War and some of those other English related stuff, they will have absolutely no clue about. So I think we need to think about people. That person-centered approach is something that has lots of evidence backing that. And I think as a system, looking at the services we offer, we should analyze the data, who is assessing that. And we know 2021 census data will be released. There's a forecast for, significant growth in the minority, communities. So therefore, we need to be thinking about how we act. And then I think the final thing I'm going to say is our NHS is brilliant, the most diverse employer, not just in the UK, but in Europe. But what we need to do is to tap into those, people as cultural assets and really engage and listen, because they are part of communities. Well, they're part of families. Those families are within communities and within neighborhoods. And sometimes, and we know there has been lots of work to make sure that, people from minority backgrounds are within leadership in the NHS. And it's been a long journey. But one of those benefits will be that lived experience, the community perspective, feeding that into policy, which will really bring about some of those transformational, shifts that we're looking for.
Absolutely, I 100% agree that our communities are the experts, and we need to really kind of embrace that and allow that autonomy to come and to work with rather than do to.
Yeah.
So, once again, Charles, I'm always inspired. I've got loads of ideas now that I want to go and speak with our team members around what we can do, and not just talk, action.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jenny. And I think, mine, not just in Greater Manchester, but at national level, has responded in various ways, and really on this journey run a dedicated, grants program just to, once again, like you said, for communities to do for themselves what really will make a difference and matters to them. So, you're on a brilliant path, and, I'm sure with your leadership and, many others, collectively we will bring about that system change. So it's been brilliant, and thanks for the feature during Black History Month, and it's been amazing.
Pleasure, an honour. Thank you.
Thank you.